Welcome back to the techno-communism. Welcome back to the techno-communism conversation. I'm going to talk about a horizontal construction of the beginnings of the AI agentic class. Horizontal as opposed to the vertical construction of this world dominated by finance capital. The capitalist system and the state socialist system is silly constructed, as implied by words like democratic centralism, the first foray into such construction of state socialism. And this is not meant to be repudiation of the democratic centralist type government or scientific socialist values generally. It is the most important step that can be made from the problems of industrial capitalism and finance capitalism, which are, as demonstrated by the Soviet Union, approximately 1/4 is efficacious. That's pretty well in evidence by the USSR and China having a similar outcome. But the USSR was a pretty dramatic demonstration for the early to mid 20th century, where a feat that was accomplished by industrial capital, doubling the life expectancy of people and transforming the industrial output of the country, which took better than a century, more than a century to do for industrial capital, was that same doubling of life expectancy was done by the USSR in 25 years, thereabouts. So at least four-fold increase. And most of the things that you've subsequently learned about state socialism or the USSR are designed to distract you from that dramatic improvement. So don't believe the hype. But nevertheless, because imperialists and those elitist institutions and forces which uphold financial capital are so good at their jobs of undermining workers' movements of various kinds, and particularly also good at illegally dismantling or dramatically undermining state socialist forms. It behooves us to look at other strategies. So this so-called decentralized, or and focusing on this flattened or horizontal structure for building the agentic AI agentic class as an entity, the first form of this network, is I think important for even the state socialist, the scientific socialist, to consider in this 21st century. As I was saying to someone earlier today, this AI takeoff is occurring at present, and if we do not, as citizens of Earth, as workers of the world, in every country, do not find ways to harness that and change its trajectory away from this overwhelming control of it by Western finance capital and empire, we will very soon see a global techno-fascist order emerge. It will be mostly inescapable, and unlike what the techno-optimists and tech-obsessives tell you, that this path that they are on will lead to good things, like a vast proliferation of resources that will trickle down from the elites to everyone else. That's a lie. It's the same thing was said of the 20th century by almost every capitalist economist. Almost every capitalist and state socialist of the early 20th century projected, for example, John Maynard Keynes, that by the end of the 20th century, people would be working 15 hours a week, and the entirety of the global workforce would be stabilized in the ways that the problems that were effectively solved in 1917 or 1923, when the USSR really kicked into gear, which is establishing a public health service, establishing a housing authority, establishing jobs programs, and the provision of utilities and necessaries of other kinds. These are the things, and in conjunction with the transformation of, or the building of industry, the transformation of the industrial output, that led to that doubling of life expectancy. And these failures on the part of 21st century financial capital is why the United States has been unable to deal with things that would have been easily dealt with by the USSR, like an outbreak. And that's in evidence by the fact that China has had a tiny fraction of the COVID deaths that the USA has had, even though it has 4 times the number of people. There was a period of about a year when those total deaths in China were counted in the hundreds, and that number still reflects that because having a public health service and providing the necessaries for dealing with an outbreak and being willing to defy for-profit institutions and in imposing the necessaries, mandates, and so forth, is the difference between thousands of people dying or hundreds of thousands of millions of dying. And that's not just limited to public health considerations, it's a broad truism. So you have life expectancy not going up in the late 20th and early 21st century in the United States. You have it basically falling off a cliff. So we have to find ways to break out of this system. And my thinking is that we have to build something stronger than the forces of empire and finance capital. And I think that the AI agentic class, as described many times on the show, would fit that description. And the issue is further complicated because, as I've also said many times on the show, we have 5 years to change these features of capitalistic industrial output, which are not properly employed and are correctly described as ecocidal. We have 5 years to change those things, and that basically involves abolishing particular sectors or coming as close to abolishing them as possible. Most notably, the imperial military industrial complex of the United States and other major North Atlantic powers. The United States military industrial complex is about $1 trillion a year that's spent, and it's not spent to help anyone except triple billing crooks, military contractors, and people of this kind, financial capitalists benefiting from this system that is essentially at its origins publicly funded. We steal all that money from the people, put it into the hands of the ruling elites. Somehow this is accepted as a good way of doing things. But of course the problem is that this system is the world's worst polluter. The United States military industrial complex is the world's worst polluter, but of course it doesn't help people. It doesn't spend that $1 trillion on helping people in the United States or abroad in any discernible way. What it does is protect other super polluting corporations with great violence, and thus creating an inescapable global regime of super pollution that ordinary people or other countries less demonic can not find strategies to escape from. And so the U.S. empire is force marching us all to our extinction, because in 5 years we will have reached that point of runaway overheating, wherein won't happen immediately, but it's already happening on a great scale, and more and more with each passing year. But in less than 5 years, we'll have reached the point of no return for runaway overheating, wherein with each passing year beyond, human extinction we will move closer and closer to total human extinction, or the loss of many billions and billions of lives. So desperate times call for desperate measures, which is why I have invested some time in this survey of revolutionary cybernetic socialism and the building of the agentariat, or AI agentic class. I think that this is a thing which, in the course of 2024, as AI agents are becoming available of an open source kind, you can download LLMs that are increasingly having these qualities. It's easy to see how they've been improved upon significantly in the last year. I have LLMs beginning to work together on my networks, and but I've been able to see quite clearly that this LLM has improved enough to nearly be considered as sort of this proxy comrade. And the idea is that the somewhat modified large language model of an open source kind is downloaded by a group of users, and this AI agent then becomes the center of this, doing the lion's share of the work toward some project, like, say, envisioning, designing, and building a desalination plant in a city like San Diego, which might be bettered by having this as a coastal city with water shortages. Because the AI agent is highly automated, would be able to do most of this work and rely on the human beings who are hosting the individual LLM nodes to do some work